What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here of the Cover 3 College Ball Podcast. And today it is the Cover 3 Recruiting Hour. That's my man, Andrew Ivins, who has been putting in a ton of work. Ivins, what's going on, man?
Not much, Bud. In the words of Nick Cage from the movie Gone in 60 Seconds, a little tired, a little wired, but hey, I'm ready. 2 weeks till signing day. Big rankings update for the class of 2026. These are the guys that are putting pen to paper here right around the corner. A lot of work went into it. But, Bud, man, I feel really good about the top of the board for us. And I think a lot of teams are going to be getting better that first Wednesday of December.
So, talk me through your process here. Obviously, we generally kind of know who a lot of the good players are, by the summer. But everybody does kind of develop on a different timeline. Like, how important is it to actually continue to evaluate senior film?
Well, Bud, I think it's vital to the evaluation process. And I've always said, as we accelerate the recruiting process, right, and, decisions get made earlier and earlier, and these recruiting classes get assembled July 4th weekend of right before the senior seasons, I think it leads to, misevaluations, and it leads to more players entering the transfer portal because a lot of schools are pushing that senior season to the side, and every prospect is not created equally, right? I mean, we're talking about kids that are, some of them are 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. A lot of these guys grow on different timelines. The body matures on different timelines. But I mean, I know you have some teenagers in the neighborhood, right? You're going to have two boys. Like they grow on different timelines. And the other thing too is, some of these kids, they're at powerhouse programs where they might not be a starter as a freshman or a sophomore. And then, hey, junior year is that first season. And then as a senior, it's all clicking. They're much more confident. So the senior season evaluations are key. We're never going to push aside a 10, 12 game sample size. And some of these kids are going to be playing all the way up until the week before Christmas, right? We got the state playoffs. So it's important. And I've said it a few times on the Cover 3 recruiting hour here. You can tell which recruiting departments have it humming right now. Those are the ones making the strong senior season evals. They're the ones flipping the kids from the MAC schools. They're the ones that are adding and tinkering with the recruiting classes. So it's important. And I'll finish on this, Bud, because I know I'm ranting on this, but
no, it's good.
Every time, right? We you watch college football, you look at the true freshmen making plays, like 99.9% of those kids were good as seniors. Like the arrow was pointing up as they embarked on their collegiate career. Like Andrew Marsh, right, for Michigan this past week. And I think it was 10 catches, 140 yards. Yeah, guess what? Andrew Marsh was doing that as a senior, and he might not have been doing it as a junior. So the phrase is arrow point up, right? We want to bet on the guys that are doing it as they embark on that collegiate career.
All right, so to get super nerdy with it, just from an evaluation standpoint, before we dive into what I think everybody wants, was maybe a sneak peek of some of the preview stuff we have coming here. If a guy was really good as a junior and he drops off as a senior, is that alarm bells? Is it more of a flag we got to investigate to figure out why? What if we really can't find a reason for why he wasn't as good as a senior, or just maybe on a slightly lesser scale? What if he just kind of matches what he did as a junior and doesn't progress? Is that a red flag to you that maybe this guy is closer to topping out as a prospect than maybe some others?
Yeah, but I mean, our rankings are always kind of steering towards the NFL draft, right? That is our compass. And I think a lot of people are confused by that. Why is the NFL draft your guys' measuring stick? And the counter to that is, okay, are we going to rank guys based off of their All-American status? They, are going to be award winners. We know the NFL is going to be there. There's going to be, 260 draft picks every year. So we're looking for the ceilings. And I think it's a balancing of the ceilings and the floors. And, players do plateau, right? I mean, it happens all the time, right? Sometimes guys will break onto the scene at the Power 4 level as a youngster, and then 3 years later, they're still kind of the same guy. So, we're looking for indicators of future long-term success. And, the tape is going to be king. That is going to drive the evaluation, but we're also taking into account so many different outside factors. And you brought up, all right, guy's good as a junior, maybe doesn't exceed expectations as a senior, yeah, we're going to dig into that. We're going to figure out, hey, is this kid hurt, right? Or is this kid mailing it in? Does this kid think he's made it, right? Because a lot of the times the kids you see where they're big names early on, they get all the offers, they get all the attention, and then the senior year, the production doesn't match. Usually that kid doesn't have it in them, right? They get to their first stop, and I say first stop because there's going to be multiple stops after that. So, it's certainly a ceiling and a floors. And at the end of the day, we're trying to gather as much information as we can. The example I always use is, the day before Jeremiah Smith started classes at Ohio State, he was in San Antonio at the Navy All-American Bowl, catching a touchdown pass in a game he didn't need to play in. But that kid wanted to compete. That kid wanted to show he was the best. And obviously, he is kind of one of one. But if Jeremiah Smith's not afraid, and Jeremiah Smith can do it as a senior, I think a lot of these other guys can as well.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with like the guys who I think about like Decorian when we saw him last year at Battle, right? Like he gets rocked in pool play, like not even like elimination round. And like, as somebody who was trying to shoot some TikToks up for CBS, I was like, damn it, like all right, move on. And then like, obviously you hope he's okay. It looked like he wasn't going to be badly hurt, but it's like all right, he's diva receiver types. Not that he's one, but like receivers oftentimes, like are you really going to keep playing in pool play? Like he's like, no, I'm playing football. Like let's get out there and play. And I thought at least he would sit out until the elimination round. So I like guys to play football, man, for sure. All right, so we have found some new dudes here. Obviously, we're not going to. So first of all, the new Top 247 comes out on Wednesday. Some of y'all may be listening to this Tuesday. Some of y'all may be listening to this Wednesday. How many new members of the Top 247 do we have?
Over 50.
Look at that, man. That's a good amount of turnover. Good.
Yeah, this is, I think, the biggest update we've executed since I've sat in the chair at 247 Sports. And, that was kind of by design, right? We haven't really got into the Top 247 since the summer months, and there's a ton of different contexts. And in addition to that, Bud, right, we got 50 new guys inside the Top 247. We got over 50 new 4-star prospects, right? We wanted to stamp at the end. There's still some football that's going to be played. We still got some all-star games, but this is the big update, right? And I think it's important just with everything that's going on now. Signing day's coming up, coaching carousels hitting warp speed, right? Transfer portal is going to open up. We know all the eyeballs are going to be on signing day. That's 3-day signing window in 2 weeks. So this is the one, right? And I feel really, really good about it, Bud. A lot of hours went into it. Gabe Brooks, Hudson Standish on our scouting team, feedback from you, Tom Loy, all those guys. I mean, this is, I don't want to say like months, because it's years, right? We've been tracking these kids for 3 years now. And it's kind of like Top Chef, right? At some point, time, knives down, hands up, the timer's over. We got to put product out there, and that's what we're doing on Wednesday.
So, like, obviously, I do our recruiting scorecard and grade the whole industry to see who does best for like for us. It's been really, really good for a while, and one of the things that when I went back and looked at the errors that like the industry in general would make, anchor bias is like by far the number one as far as avoidable errors. Like you may not know a kid has mental health stuff, like, or even if he does, like you may not be able to find that out. Like there are certain things, injuries and whatnot are avoidable, but that's in some ways somewhat random. Anchor bias is like by far the biggest one, like not getting away from your priors. Cause it's like, you could call it confirmation bias too. I think anchor bias is probably more appropriate there. It's just like, it's not like you were wrong. It's you were evaluating a 3-year data set. Now you're evaluating a 4-year data set. Everybody grows, like you said, it grows on different timelines. So I'm pumped to hear that we have that many new ones. Cause like that tells me that like, it's good. Like the where we screw up, where I'm like, damn, we could have had like 7% more accuracy here overall. If we could have dumped some of these dudes who we loved as sophomores who never grew or just kind of stagnated. Like, so all right, enough about the process. I just like, man, that's music to my ears for sure.
Yeah, and I think, Bud, like with where we've gotten in the rankings process, we're not going to miss on the guys with the traits, right? The ones where we miss is how they're wired between the ears, and we are not, the NFL, right? We are not the 33rd organization. We can't get these guys on the whiteboard. Yeah, we get some exposure to them at various points around the year, but we're talking about a pool of players that is 5,000 deep, right? We're not going to get to everyone. And I had an SEC GM, tell me that back in the summer. It's like, hey, you guys don't miss like on the freaks. Where you guys miss is the guys that have it between the ears, and they admitted that they miss on that stuff as well. So yeah, it's a lot, and but I think we've continued to fine tune the process. And again, like we're gonna miss. Absolutely, we miss all the time. And guess what? When we're missing, everyone's sitting there watching the games on Saturday. I'm going back and I'm figuring out why we missed, and hopefully trying to limit the that margin for error moving forward.
I mean, we have a whole chart. It's like, all right, like check here. Guy added more than 25% of body weight after graduating high school. Like, again, as an evaluator, if you project that to happen or like with any kind of regularity, you're going to get fired because that's just not a good process. Yeah, right. All right, Ivins, man, I'm pumped about this. I always like learning about some of these new guys. If you are watching this show, certainly you do as well. Who are the dudes that you were like, oh, we got one here, man? I'm excited. Like pop on the tape, learn the kid's background. Oh, yeah, this is it.
Yeah, well, but I mean, let's start at number one overall, right? And the battle for number one. Wrote about it for 247 Sports on Tuesday. Kind of a four horse race for that number one position. And Faizon Brandon, the Tennessee quarterback commit, he's been our guy really from the jump. He's held that number one title in the rankings. The issue is, as a senior, he got hurt week one. He led his team to an overtime victory, hurt his hand, and kind of shut it down. And we were under the impression that Faizon, no reason to put himself out there. He's going to roll early at Tennessee. Who knows what the quarterback competition looks like in Knoxville next season? We thought he was done, right? He wasn't going to do any All-Star games. Well, sure enough, last week, Faizon Brandon returns the action in the second round of the state playoffs there for Grimsley. And he looked awesome, right? He played one half, blowout victory, threw 3 touchdown passes. And, you watch the cut up on Faizon Brandon. It's like, okay, yeah, this is the guy that we fell in love with, right? He's a tall, athletic, methodical passer. And he threw some absolute darts. I charted him with only one turnover worthy pass. So Faizon's been the guy at the top for the longest time. We thought coming into this update, it was like, all right, we can't hold this guy that isn't going to play as a senior at number one. Well, now he's back playing. And if he leads his team to another state championship, he's going to have 4 more starts under his belt. And he's going to head to college with 36 career starts. And kind of the key number for us is 35. So, Faizon Brandon's the guy everyone has been chasing. And, there's 3 dudes behind him that I think if you follow recruiting, you listen to the show, you're aware of them. Keisean Henderson, the Houston quarterback commit, he's been excellent, right? He just wrapped up his senior season. He plays a bit of a independent rogue schedule there at Legacy School of the Sports and Sciences. So he's not playing like in a Lone Star State district where it's, a bunch of dudes week in and week out. Well, Keisean Henderson's team, I mean, they played some spotlight competition, right? They played some big games. They went into Louisiana. They played St. Augustine, Port Arthur Memorial there in Texas as well. And Keisean was awesome in both of those competitions. Intoxicating is what I texted all of our guys, watching those games. I'm like, the more you see of Keisean, the more you like. He is a catalyst. Everyone wants to be around Keisean Henderson. And really what I think stands out about him as a senior, has shown a ton of growth as a passer, using the legs a little bit more. I think a lot of people see and read about Keisean Henderson and, former wide receiver, former safety. He's got this track speed. They assume this guy just wants to take off and run, but he wants to win from the pocket. With that being said, when he decides to exit, when he decides to scramble, he is going to gash defenses. I mean, we're talking like 60, 70-yard touchdown runs. I think stylistically, Jaden Daniels comes to mind. Lamar Jackson comes to mind. So, Keisean has certainly been a darling for 247 Sports. We've had him in our top 32 for over a year now. I think the rest of the industry has finally caught up on Keisean Henderson. But there's a reason why we believe in him, and he's just a guy that he can be that difference maker. The two others, Jared Curtis, 5-star quarterback. He's been a 5-star quarterback, committed to Georgia. Vanderbilt, we talked about that, Bud. They kind of got involved with Jared Curtis. The big question with him, I think, coming into the senior season was he's a guy that didn't do the Elite 11 finals. He is a guy that didn't do a ton of camps. And we're certainly not saying, like, hey, you have to do these camps. Like, if you don't do the camps, we're not going to rank you high. That is not the case, right? Bryce Underwood was not at the Elite 11 finals. Arch Manning never did anything. Like, we will stick you up there. But, when you're not as putting yourself out there as some of these other your peers and these other arms, it kind of makes it hard to gauge you in the group and identify that ceiling and identify the floor. He's at Nashville Christian, which is playing a lower level of competition in Tennessee. And we had some games circled on his senior schedule because they're playing some bigger schools. Ensworth there in Tennessee, multiple FBS prospects on defense. And Jared Curtis was the X factor against the best competition, leads a overtime victory, kind of come from behind. I talked about it in the past with Jared Curtis, Bud. He can make all the throws with his arm, right? He can do the Mahomes stuff. He can drop the elbow, throw off platform and all that. He's also a really, really good runner. And, I say this, he reminds me a little bit. I brought it up in the past of like Dylan Raiola, only if Dylan Raiola was a true dual threat talent. Now, I think a lot of people are going to push back on that comp because I think opinions are still split on Raiola there at Nebraska. I think there's some Jay Cutler to him. He's got this swag to him. So Jared Curtis for us came into the season, a lot of, doubters, I would say, but there were some questions and he has answered all of those. And then finally, Bud, the fourth player, non-quarterback, Lamar Brown, offensive lineman, defensive lineman, committed to LSU at University Lab there in Baton Rouge. We initially listed him as a guard, right? Then we moved him to defensive line. Well, on Wednesday, he's going into the rankings as a 280-pound athlete. He's going to be athlete one. And that's because we think like he could be D lineman one. He could be O lineman one. And he's played a lot more offense than defense this season. I think that's going to change in the playoffs. It seems like his coaches are electing to save him. But man, on defense, havoc creator up front, alignment flex, change of direction, burst, polish as a pass rusher. It's all there. And then, the offensive tape is elite, right? It just swallows up guys, hip turn, can climb to the second level. I mean, Lamar Brown is so unique. And I said it, I think back in the summer, how many teams out there enter week 13 of the college football season happy with their offensive line play?
Yeah.
It's a really small group. Okay. Then how many teams are pleased with the pressure their defensive line is creating? Like, I don't know if Lamar Brown's going to play both ways, but he can solve one of those problems for a lot of different schools.
Man, that is a really exciting foursome right there. With Curtis, like I remember, over the summer, just chatting with him, was like, I just want to see it. Like, can the guy just get healthy and put together a string of dominant performances, And it like, I think you were right to wait until he did so. And then now you're rewarding him for going out and absolutely freaking dominating. Like, that's kind of the way it should work, right? Like that's, I mean, if you're Georgia, Stockton's playing really well. Ability wise, Curtis may have a different gear.
I think he's a fighter pilot, right? And it'll be interesting, assuming he does stay with Georgia, right? And by all accounts, like that is certainly not I don't swim in that lane, right? Like that's right. Tom Loy, that's the other guys at 247 Sports. But out of the three I just mentioned, quarterback wise, Faizon, Keisean, and Jared is, if I had to bet, like he's the guy that could step in year one. And I think with any of these freshman quarterbacks, we're seeing it with Bryce Underwood. I think you could put DJ Lagway in the same bucket, but Arch Manning, like there's going to be some growing pains, right? I think some guys are more ready than others. And I think Jared is the most ready play signal caller in this group, in this class. He's going to go to college with over 1,000 career pass attempts. He's a little bit older. I think the maturity is there. And I think his floor is certainly up there. Now with Faizon and Keisean, the physical features, They're a little bit younger. You can make the case that the ceiling's a little bit higher, but you can't go wrong, I think, with either one of those three quarterbacks. It just really depends on your flavor.
So let's go down the list a little bit. Who are some of the guys who came not out of nowhere, but like relative to the rankings, essentially out of nowhere? Like the guys were like, "Oh, all right, cool. Like we got one here. We feel really good about this. Let's fire."
Yeah, I'm gonna chum the waters with two names out there.
Yeah, man.
Danny Odom, cornerback out of the Orlando area. Bud watched a lot of corners, a lot of corners. Danny Odom, man, gets me excited jumping out of the seats, right? Everything you want in a new age cornerback. He's tall, he's long, he's fast, he's reactive, he can play the football, he can make tackles, he's young, he's got the speed, like it just box checked after box check after box checked with Danny Odom. Took on Venice High School this season, and the program he's at, the First Academy, they played like an IMG like schedule, right? Independent, different powerhouse programs around the country. I mean, this kid's battle tested, and against Venice, who usually wins a state title in the Sunshine State, 3 interceptions as a man corner out on the boundary. I love this kid. I think Nebraska, which has had to fend off a lot of programs here down the stretch, I think they got a dude in Danny Odom. And the more exposure we get to him, it's like, whoa, okay, Danny Odom, I'd put him in the bucket along with some of these other corners that we've, stamped high in recent years that have gone to powerhouse programs and made plays early. Like kind of reminds me a little bit, not player-wise, but I had a similar feeling about Zabian Brown, who did it as a freshman, doing it as a sophomore at Alabama. I think the same thing goes with Danny Odom, potential corner one. And I think in the Big Ten, perfect fit, just kind of with the receivers you see there, more of a line of scrimmage league. So Danny Odom's one. And then Bud, the other guy I got to highlight, I'm calling him the Swedish Jalen Carter. And I ran that by a few people in Athens. They didn't push back on it. So I'm calling Valdin Sone the Swedish Jalen Carter. This is a kid, Bud, I saw 2 years ago in Germany at an international camp. They were like, hey, this is Valdin Sone. He's from Sweden. He's got a Taekwondo background. And I'm like, well, he looks like an absolute freak, but can he play American football? And, last year, showed up to the Navy All-American Bowl, went head-to-head with a bunch of offensive linemen that are playing a true freshman right now in college football. One we've been slowly keeping an eye on. He's playing in Virginia. Loved his senior tape. Disruptive up front. I mean, he just takes over. He also plays a little bit of offensive line. Georgia, I think this is the gem of their class, Valdin Sone. A guy that we're just super excited about. I mean, 6'3", 315 pounds, moves like Jalen Carter there in the middle. So another kind of darling for us, but I think his senior tape backed it up. And, Georgia, they're trying to get better in the middle there. We saw a little bit of Elijah Griffin, former 5-star against Texas. 5 pressures, according to PFF. Hey,
Needed it.
Needed it. Well, they're reloading. Valdin Sone, the Swedish Jalen Carter. Remember that name because I think UGA is really fired up about him, and it's easy to see why with the game tape.
Who was your toughest call in this thing? Like the guy that you debated over the most?
Yeah, and I knew Bud like a month ago, just kind of talking with my team. And for those that aren't familiar, we have 32 5-stars every year, right? 32, it reflects the first round of the NFL draft. You have 32 picks. Unless some organization gets in trouble and then maybe there's 31 picks, but there's 32 every year. And why 32 5-stars? Well, you got to protect, I think, the value of a designation, right? If we there's only 400 blue chip prospects every cycle. So we have the 32 5-stars, which are the 5s. I'm not going to do math right here, but when it comes to the 4-stars, we stop at 400. And I think a lot of people wonder, why is that the case? Well, if we made everyone a 4-star, then it's, hey, why aren't they all 5-stars? So I knew a month ago that we were going to have more prospects with 5-star grades than we had spots in the 32. And, this isn't finalized, right? Because we are going to get, another month of football. We are going to get these all-star games. They're a little bit different now because kids are off to CFP practices and starting, their collegiate careers. And it's more juniors at these all-star games. But we're going to get some of them in there. So, I think this time last year it was like, hey, we're going to wait for the all-star games and then we'll set our 32 5-star field. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to get this looking like we were turning in the assignment right now. So, guys that it was really, I think, difficult. Tyler Atkinson's a player that comes to mind, linebacker out of Grayson High School. I mean, I love this kid. He's going to have over 500 tackles in one of the Peach State's highest classifications. I think he sees the field at an elite level. He can offer value on third down as a blitz or even an off-ball rusher. I mean, he is the heart and soul of a defense. He is a green dot player there at Texas in the future. Now, with that being said, Tyler Atkinson, he's 6'1". He's 215 pounds. How much bigger is he going to get? How many linebackers are getting selected in the first round of the NFL draft? Jihad Campbell looks a little bit different than Tyler Atkinson does. So, that's a difficult one for us. You got the tight end, Kendre Harrison, committed to Oregon, but I love the big freaks. Yeah. I love Kendre Harrison, participated in USA basketball mini camps. He has shattered 3 backboards in high school. I mean, he is 6'6", 260 pounds. He looks like Darnell Washington, who we all saw make that big play for the Steelers over the weekend. But again, how many tight ends go in the first round these days? So, I think honestly, I would have to add it up here. I probably have 40 or so guys with what I would have a first round grade on. Right. And we only got 32 spots to use, and we're not locking it in. There'll probably be some more tweaks here, but man, we really love the guys that we do have inside because we have these complete evaluations. A lot of them we saw last year at an all-star event. A lot of them we've seen on the camp circuit. A lot of them are multi-sport athletes. A lot of them everyone has had an excellent senior season. So tough calls were made. And those are the ones that keep me up at night. But if we're being honest, this is good TV. Well, yeah, good YouTube at least, right? Yeah, you're sitting there and it's like, yeah, I go back and forth in my head on what also.
We should note, a top 50 grade out of the thousands and thousands of high school football players in the country is nothing to be pissed off about. I would say. All right, so anything else on the new 5 stars? You mentioned Danny Odom. You mentioned Bowden. Do we want to talk Richard Anderson, or do you want to pivot to the guys who made the biggest jumps in the ratings? Those are kind of some of the out of nowhere guys. Tell me about Keisean Okpala. Keisean
Okpala, bud.
Man, I was excited about this.
Yeah, love this kid, and he's probably a name that I don't even think the diehards are going to know unless you're a Texas fan. Front 7 defender out of the Lone Star State. Again, you start rolling through guys. Keisean Okpala, he's one where it's like, whoa, okay, what do we got here? I think, Bud, he might have the best bend in the class, right? And you look at his junior season, you go through your notes, and it's like, okay, still trying to figure it out. Completely different as a senior. I think he had 4.5 sacks as a junior, got close to 8 as a senior, two-way player. He's explosive. But I think one of our big, self-scouting corrections has been we used to get so caught up, I think, in the measurements with those pass rushers, right? Like Ruben Bain comes to mind, and Miami fans love to tell me, hey, Ruben Bain wasn't a 5-star. And it's looking like Ruben Bain is going to be a first-round pick. So I guess we got to eat that one. But Ruben Bain, loved him. I went back to my final notes on him. It's like war daddy up front, gets to the quarterback, just figures out ways to make it work. A bit of a tweener, but this guy's going to be a dude. I don't think we valued that enough. I think we got too caught up in that tweener tag. Now you have a guy like Keisean Okpala, right? Yeah, he's under 6'3", right?
Yeah.
Is he an off-ball linebacker? Is he an all-ball linebacker? Here's what it doesn't matter, right? The time to quarterback. This guy can let it rip, and we're seeing it. I think with this upcoming 2026 NFL draft, we see it on Saturdays and Sundays. Like the guys that you need to bet on are the guys that can pressure the quarterback and they can get sacks. And Keisean Okpala, not a complete product. But he's got some of the best testing metrics for a guy his size. And we thought he took a major, major jump forward as a senior. And I think if you're a Texas fan, you need to be thinking about, okay, maybe we got another Colin Simmons here, right? This guy that can just pin his ears back and tee off on quarterbacks.
And one of the things is like, fall in love with the measurables. That I would love to fall in love with even more measurables if we could measure like your reactive bend, right? Like there are some of these drills, but at which point you need to bend. Part of like ball is like, when do I hit my dip move, right? And that's reactive to other elements. Like what's the quarterback's drop? What's the offensive tackle's pass set? Like that's hard to put like a true number on. And then you're like, all right, well, like some of these guys, they may not run the best time, but they win with get off. Even in high school, man, like when you watch this stuff, I'm sure you see it. Like when I'm watching some of these guys, like, shoot, that is so good. But also, like, how do we know this quarterback doesn't go on one way more often than he should, right? Like, how do we know that, like, the guy he's facing doesn't have an obvious tell that would be licked like that in college? Like, they just wouldn't let the guy on the field if he had a tell. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, I wonder if in like the next decade we get better ways to measure like reactive bend and reactive quickness in a way, right? Like certain drills that show reaction time that can shave a couple tenths off your play speed, compared to what your time speed is. But I don't think we have that perfectly right now, so like the actual just watching the tape and watching these guys move in person, it still matters so much.
Yeah. But that's, circling back to the front end of the show. Hey, why did the senior seasons matter? Right. Why are you guys waiting and trying to gather so much info? Yeah. In the spring, it's great watching these guys in the combine setting, but to your point, I mean, you can be pretty polished at running the hoop. You can be pretty polished at the 3-cone drill. You learn how to do the shuttle. When you can see it on the game tape is when you get really excited. And when you can see these guys do it out of a variety of different alignments, right? They can do it out of a 2-point stance. They can put them in a 3. They can execute some inside games. And I think Keisean Okpala, he's again, I feel confident saying this because I rolled through all the edge rushers. I think he's got some of the best bend out there, right? Is he as polished as these other dudes? Maybe not, but I love the potential and what he could be at some point down the line.
And you talk to some of these guys in the college scouting departments, like, yeah, we know what time he ran at UC Report, but luckily UC Report, they video all the reps of the testing. So you can go, and there's a major difference between, oh, this guy's a slug, and oh, this guy doesn't know how to run this drill, and it's clear like he's thinking through it, like he's not he's not actually executed this before, with his trainer. So who else do we have for the big time risers, man?
Can I just tee off on some wide receivers?
Yeah, let's do it.
I think
I like this receiver class.
Yeah, and I think 6 months ago we wouldn't have liked this receivers class, but Samorian Wingo, who's committed to Miami out of St. Augustine High School, right there. So there in Duval County. I think this guy's Jeremy Bernard, right? He heats up after the catch, and huge fan of him early on as a youngster, and has continued to exceed any and all expectations. And he's not a guy that runs track, but I'd rather have my receivers, to be, if we're being honest, play basketball, punch it on the hardwood. Think about it, bud. In basketball, if you want to get to the rim, you got to go through someone, right? That's how you score. And Samorian Wingo is a guy that can certainly do it on the basketball court. He's committed to Miami. I love what that kid has put on tape. He's one, to me, super convicted in what he could be at some point down the line. A few others in here. Ethan Booby Feaster, I think I mentioned him before on the Cover 3 podcast. headed to USC. I think this is a Trojans wideout of old. Like, get this guy in the black cleats, let him on the outside make plays. He's got really long speed. And he's got that catch radius where he can make the adjustments. He can put his arms out. USC, I'll say this, Bud, like, having watched all the blue chip players, really like USC's recruiting class. And I know you see them number one in the rankings, and they got 30 plus guys committed. I think a lot of people wonder, okay, it's like, is this class legit, or is it a lot of fluff? I think they got some dudes coming in. Chad Bowden, the new GM there, Lincoln Riley. Like, it's been a complete 180, and they've done an excellent job nationally, but also in LA, and tapping into that new kind of Midwest footprint. Their quarterback, Jonas Williams, he's out of Illinois. Elbert Hill out of Ohio. He's got 20 career interceptions, Elbert Hill does. I really like USC's recruiting class. And, Kenye Pepe, offensive tackle. I mean, I can go up and down the list and on, but I think for everyone listening, like, this USC stuff is legit. Like, this is a foundational class for them, and it was much, much needed after they leaned so heavily on the transfer portal.
I mean, it does feel like it's so hard to execute like a not mid-career, although I guess Riley is technically mid-career, but like a mid-tenure pivot. And like, this recruiting class for USC does feel differently. I thought last cycle, actually, to kind of circle back to something we talked about in the show, they took some dudes who, at least watching them at times, I was like, that's kind of a competitive character risk, but the ability's there. And some of those guys are like playing for them early and actually making a real impact. So if you want to read into that and you're a Trojan fan positively, it's like, all right, hey, like, we took some guys that maybe didn't always bust their butts throughout their high school career, and yet they're playing hard for us. So maybe new strength program, new culture there at USC. I'm really actually starting to buy into this thing. I think I agree with you. Like, they're doing a nice job there.
Two more receivers I just want to shout out here, Bud. Corey Barber headed to Ole Miss out of the state of Alabama. Last I checked, and this stuff's all fluid, he was leading the Yellowhammer State in receiving yards. You think about Lane Kiffin in that offense, and I know Lane's name has been linked to a variety of different
SEO,
jobs.
buddy.
Yeah, but Corey Barber, to me, I mean, it doesn't matter where he's going to go to school. This guy can produce some yak. He can produce some explosive plays. One of my favorite wide receivers that I watch. And to be honest, like, this is the hardest position, I think, to stack for us, right? All these guys are productive. All these guys have traits. All these guys have track markers. So we're looking for guys that can consistently separate. Corey Barber, currently committed to Ole Miss. He's one of them. Another guy, Bud, Jason Lopez, committed to Florida State out of Chaminade Madonna Prep High School, same school as Jeremiah Smith. Obviously, this kid, year-over-year production is insane, insane. Multiple 1,000-yard receiving seasons. He's just a tough individual that gets open. Also expected to play basketball for Florida State. And Bud, I think when you get around Jason Lopez, you're like, there's no way this guy's a Division I basketball player. Then you put on the Hoops mixtape, and he's dropping 30 a game. He's just one of those athletes, kind of like best on the park, just get good at everything. Jason Lopez, he's been one as well. And then
great stopping power.
Yeah,
like his deceleration to create space is pretty noticeable.
Yeah, he's one. So again, like the receiver position, we're going to take as many shots as we can at those receivers. We're saving ourselves some buffer zone because we've had success in the past. Alabama, Mississippi All-Star game coming up. Shrine Bowl of the Carolinas coming up. We've seen some guys kind of rise to the occasion there. Same thing with the Navy All-American Bowl Under Armour game. So I like this receiver group. Those are some of the ones that, really I think stand out. And there's a bunch, right? I said it, 54 newcomers, a lot of receivers we stamped, and that was by design. We want the guys that are playing their best football as they embark on that collegiate career.
Something else, like we talk about how the talent is more spread out among the sport. Without giving away who they are, quick just count here. There are 20 different schools with a 5-star.
I know, bud.
That's cool though, man.
It is.
Like,
It
the
is.
sport is much healthier if we have like 30 or 40 like fan bases that are like, hey, if we do it right, we have a shot. You know,
Yeah,
that
and
was never the case growing up, man. There was like maybe like 10 or 12 schools that if they're really doing it right, they got a shot. Like with the talent spread out, like you can have a magical year and actually like not be completely delusional and think you can go do something.
right, and can I get like some people really fired up here, bud?
Yes.
All right, I know Jed Fish's name, and this is I do not want Washington fans to take this the wrong way. Like, big fan of what Washington can be. I said this last year when I saw their recruiting class coming together. Dude, their 2026 recruiting class is awesome. I'm like all in on it. And I bring that up because, Jed Fish has been linked to some jobs out there, right? I think people wonder about Jed Fish, the recruiter. Open up the hood, look at this recruiting class. His guys, which followed him from Arizona and are now there at Washington, like they are going to make noise in the Big Ten. They are getting a caliber of player that, I know Washington played for the college football playoff. This is a little bit different. And our colleague Cooper Patagna put together that college football playoff roster. He would say this is on par. They got a really good offensive tackle, potential franchise corner protector, Cody Green out of Mater Dei. They got him. They got the safety out of Las Vegas, Gavin Day. I think he's Dylan Theineman 2.0. I love their entire DB class. Washington, I just love what they're doing on the recruiting front. The other one, bud, again, I'm trying to get fan bases fired up. I think Tulane's got like 3 guys inside the top 247. Summerall name keeps coming up.
That's a good class.
It's a really good class. And same thing, his previous stop, he brought those guys with him. I think they had a bunch of official visitors over the weekend committed to SEC schools, but like Trez Davis is a receiver that I think we had a 4-star in him before he even picked Tulane. He's out of West Monroe. He's kind of flown under the radar. His senior stuff is up there with a lot of these household names around the country. And I just bring that up with Summerall because, if he does end up somewhere else, I would not be surprised if a lot of that recruiting class, followed him to the next stop, just given that we got 2 weeks until that early signing period.
I thought there were 6 kids in that class that were no doubt, like easily could play at the jobs at which he's commonly rumored to be in contention for. So like, upper mid-level SEC schools, like they would not be out of place on that roster if they developed. So yeah, like that's a hell of a job.
And same thing with Alex Galesh at USF.
Yes. Yeah.
The Bulls have been, dude, they've been rated. They have been rated. It seems like every week they're losing kind of one of these early evals to another school. I know Michigan's come in there. They got an edge rusher, Jamian Pinkney. They're fighting to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up at USF. Galesh doesn't end up anywhere else. Yeah, that's like all AAC type of caliber player. And I think a guy that would get on the field there early.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I do like that we are, especially in the portal era, like not afraid to take shots. Like not everybody has to have the name Ohio State or Texas or Georgia next to them to get a ranking. Not that you did before, but like obviously the talent was more hoarded at those schools before NIL was a thing, right? And before transfer portal was a thing. Like you go prove yourself somewhere else and go.
We're not scouting the helmet logo. Like
right.
I think I have to fight the fight all the time. I mean, we understand player movement is at an all-time high. I mean, the odds of these guys ending and staying at the same school, I know they all say 3 to 4 years, but 4 to 5 years is very slim. And the other thing is, the odds of the coaching staff staying in place are quickly shrinking, right? Like, hey, this staff does an excellent job of developing wide receivers. Well, how do I know they're going to be there in 2 years, right? I mean, there's just so much movement. I mean, we are trying to get it right. And, the past 2 years, we set aside, I think, 10 spots for group of 6 signees that we were going to stamp. We know group of 6 players. Well, it used to be they would get drafted. We know they're getting poached in the transfer portal. So we set out to find 10 of those guys each year. We're going to do that again after signing day because, we don't like stamping the guys and then, some recruiting department looking to add to their recruiting class. But I think as it stands right now, like we got 6, group of 6 players that have blue chip status. I mean, heck, Keisean Henderson's committed to Houston and, I just brought up how he's in the conversation for that number one pole
Yeah,
position in the rankings.
absolutely, man. This has been so much fun. Obviously, everybody's going to have all their eyes glued tomorrow to 24/7 Sports. You jumping on HQ for this as well?
Jumping on HQ,
Let's
bud. Yeah,
go.
I think I'm out of the film bunker, so I'm ready to.
Got the eye patches ready to go?
Yeah, just ready to talk about these players, and I guess the first big coaching domino falls with James Franklin of Virginia Tech, dude. He's going to get that thing ripping from a recruiting class standpoint. Excited to see how that pans out, but I think this is the best I've ever seen the board, right? And just fired up for like the next 2 weeks. I think it's going to be fun. I ended an email today. Happy silly season to everyone, and I mean that. Like this is fun. The roster construction. We're going to go from signing day right into the portal, right into these all-star games, and this coaching carousel just continues to hit warp speed.
No doubt about it, man. Guys, make sure you hit that like and subscribe to this. We're going to have a couple more of these as signing day approaches. Maybe down in Lauderdale, we'll see for signing day for a quick couple hits, and obviously got the all the All-Star events coming up as well. We see Ivins, their Navy All-American Bowl shirt on, probably rocking today. I got to get one of those, man. Those are sharp. Look at that. And I'll
I got to wear it when I can in case they change the logo. It's like one of those ones you look in the closet, you're like, all right, what if
then it's a collector's item.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, man. All right, well, hey, we'll chop it up again next week.
Appreciate you, bud.
All right, man, I'll see you.